Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for whatever time zone you may be in. Thank you for investing your time with us to participate in our webinar, Cost Management Certification for Mexico and Latin America. A few administrative items for those of you that may have logged on a bit early, and we have a very large audience today. We appreciate your participation, but if you did log in a bit earlier, you may have seen a few of these slides. But all attendees will be in listen-only mode. All questions and comments can be initiated through the questions feature in your control box, and that's located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So please feel free to send questions along the way. We do have a lot of participants, as I've noted, and if we cannot field your question in the live webinar today, we can certainly take them offline with you. And we'll have 3 anonymous polling questions for you to see how you stack up against your peers on various costing topics. We've structured today's webinar as a roundtable discussion with industry leaders that are blazing the path for cost management in manufacturing. First, Jesus Campos Cortez is the CEO and managing partner of Corporate Resources Management, headquartered in Mexico City. Jesus is an internationally recognized instructor in purchasing and supply chain management. Also, we have Luis Mace Torres, a supply chain logistics and Mexico foreign trade expert that works as a consultant and a trainer for corporate resources management. Jeff Burris also is with us today, and Jeff is the founder and managing partner of Advanced Purchasing Dynamics.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Glad you're spending some time with us.
Excellent, Jeff. And finally, my name is Mike Betts. I'm not sure I fall into the category of industry leader like the other 3 distinguished gentlemen, but I'm the CEO and managing partner for Advanced Purchasing Dynamics, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. So we have some great content for you today, and it's based upon the collective thinking of our panelists and the experience they've gleaned by working on major cost transformational projects in manufacturing. Our goal today is to transfer as much knowledge as we can while discussing the current pressure to eliminate and reduce costs in manufacturing, the phases of cost reduction. We'll also share with you a real case study of how cost reduction came to life for one particular manufacturer. Then we'll review what costing skills are needed for today's manufacturing environment. And finally, why certification is pertinent to you and your company. Jesus, why don't we start by you welcoming the participants to our webinar today.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Can you hear me right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, first of all, bienvenidos a todos. Vamos a cambiar a español. Lo que tenemos que entender es que las presiones de compras nunca terminan, ¿no? Cuando pensábamos que las cosas iban bien, nos aparece toda la pandemia y lo primero que hace la dirección es voltear y decirle a compras, ayúdame con el costo. Pero no hacemos milagros, ¿no? Entonces, lo que tenemos que entender es que hay metodologías que nos ayudan a identificar las oportunidades en el costo. Nosotros estuvimos buscando, yo había trabajado ya con empresas europeas en entrenamientos de costos, sobre todo en la industria automotriz, y me encantaba. Entonces, nosotros estuvimos buscando quién hacía esto de manera formal, que tenía un programa, que tenía una certificación, que tenía la experiencia, y por mucho APD es la solución. O sea, estamos muy contentos, ha sido un proceso muy interesante, hay mucha apertura de parte de ellos, y créanme, yo llevo en esto más de 30 años, y cada vez que utilizo, yo estoy tomando la certificación, ya estoy por terminarla, porque obviamente no me gusta promover algo que no conozco, y la verdad es que sí te abre la luz, ¿no? Te da oportunidades de encontrar ahorros justos, ¿no? Ahorros donde realmente existen. Entonces, va a haber preguntas al final del webinar. Yo les pediría que si tienen preguntas las vayan juntando y yo los invito a que conozcan a detalle lo que se hace aquí. Hay quien me va a decir, esto es para ingenieros. No, los compradores somos ingenieros, psicólogos, químicos, agrónomos, maestros de ceremonias. No me digan que no nos gusta estar en todo. La verdad es que con una simple base de datos, una hoja de Excel y muy poca estadística, descubres oportunidades que estaban ahí. Me dirán, oye, yo quiero hacer analítica prescriptiva con un software. A ver, ubiquémonos, lo que tu empresa te invierte $100,000 en un software, hay mucho que hacer, mucho que hacer. Y lo que vas a hacer allá, ya lo vas a entender porque lo hiciste aquí. Entonces, gracias por la confianza, gracias por estar aquí. En unos próximos días va a haber otro webinar donde vamos a presentar todo nuestro portafolio de soluciones en compras, incluyendo este programa, más todo lo que tenemos, pero escuchen, disfrútenlo y van a aprender mucho en esto. ¿Ok? Entonces, bienvenidos y gracias. Mike, all yours. Well,
Thank you, Jesus.
Mike, just let me explain them. Están viendo ahorita unas frases. McKinsey ha hecho grandes cosas en compras y acaba de sacar un artículo donde habla claramente de eso y dice, señores, si no trabajan con sus proveedores como partners, esto va a ser una guerra y todos vamos a aprender. Y el método que van a aprender aquí es un método para lograr ahorros pensando como socios, no como enemigos. Y creo que eso había que remarcarlo, ¿ok? Entonces, bueno, nada más no quise dejar de mencionar la cita de McKinsey. Mike, all yours, sorry, and thank you.
Okay, excellent. Excellent, Jesus. Thank you. And we appreciate the words you said about advanced purchasing dynamics and the importance of cost management certification. You mentioned a couple things about the partnership. And Jeff Burris, can you tell the webinar participants a little about advanced purchasing dynamics?
I founded APD 16 years ago after a long career in purchasing and also as a general manager of a P&L division. And I founded it around the things I loved about purchasing. And one is just an absolute passion for understanding cost. And secondly is collaborating with suppliers. So for the last 16, 17 years, we've been helping companies achieve really good results on their spend by using good cost analytic tools and collaborating with their supply base. And that's the basis of the cost certification program we're going to talk about.
Excellent, Jeff. So I'd like to share with you, I recently met with the CEO of a major tier 1 automotive supplier. And he said to me that they were trying to win some new business from a major OEM. He had one simple question for his team. What does it cost to produce the part in our Winston-Salem plant? What does it cost to produce the part in our Querétaro, Mexico plant? And what would it cost to get the part from our supply chain? He said it took him about a week, and he had the answer presented to him in a very nice professional presentation. But he went on to tell me that, Mike, I needed that answer in minutes, not weeks. So, Jeff, given this scenario, and I'm sure there are other examples you can provide, why do you think so many manufacturers have challenges with cost management?
Up on the slide is a slide of a study that was done by the Institute of Management Accountants and the APIC Society. And what they found was that manufacturing companies, their finance group is primarily concerned with financial reporting to get bank loans, financial reporting for the shareholders. Secondarily comes tax reporting and tax reporting. And third, and sometimes left off the list altogether, is manufacturing costing. And those are three different types of costing that finance groups have to do: financial reporting, tax reporting, and cost accounting on the shop floor. And cost accounting on the shop floor is the least prioritized by the CFO, and folks don't ask them to change. So we have a number of companies that we've worked with over the years that have called us and said, hey, the buyer's asking for cost breakdowns, the buyer's asking for cost detail, and we just can't pull it together. Can you help us respond to a buyer's request for quotation? And we've helped those companies out. And what we found is exactly what the APIX and IMA study found, and that is an over-reliance on financial reporting and tax reporting,
Okay, excellent overview, Jeff. So let's focus on the current pressure to eliminate and reduce costs in manufacturing, Jeff. If you think about the cost impact curve, where a company has the biggest impact on cost at the concept stage, and let's call it less of an impact as they move closer to production, it makes sense for manufacturers to focus on cost management from the start, even before they submit the first quote. Yet what we see in our consulting practice is that a lot of companies start focusing on cost management and cost reduction after they win the business, and in some cases, even as they go into production. So I'd like to talk about manufacturers that are considered leaders in cost management, Jeff, and how they approach it. Can you share your viewpoint, and perhaps we can consider these as trends you're seeing in cost management?
Yeah, Mike, if you just advance the slide one and show the curve there, what we normally see, if you look at the chart that was just put on the bottom, the impact on cost is really high if you've got collaboration and working with suppliers and working with manufacturing before the design is finalized. But what this slide is showing, that supplier selection is happening after the design is complete. And when it comes to trying to optimize cost, a lot of companies are waiting and doing cost optimization activities at the end when they run into a costing problem, and they're doing it only by exception.
Yeah, I think we see that quite a bit in our consulting practice, Jeff. And it's just a lesson to be learned that type of optimization needs to happen further. Maybe you can comment on that, Jeff.
What we see leaders doing is they implement, they understand, what the current costs are, they understand should cost. They have collaborative costing relationships with their suppliers that allow them to do supplier selection at the early phase and start collaborating with suppliers on the physicals of the part design and the physicals of the production process to get costing done. And what they have the ability to do is perform gap analysis all along the way, kind of working together through all the gates of the program launch, and do cross-functional cost reviews that are really focused along the life of the program. And the collaborative cost and optimization activities, right, instead of just being cost optimization activities that happen at the end, they're collaborative cost optimization activities that happen through the program launch. And what we see at the end is that arrow got a lot smaller at the end. There's little need or a little benefit at that point in time from continuing collaborative cost after the launch.
Absolutely. And I think if that's not a collaborative cost optimization, first of all, after the launch, what we're finding is that a lot of companies may be bidding on business that they should have walked away from. And some people are even bidding on business that they win, but may not be as highly profitable as they want. And that's due to the cost, because the costs were incorrectly calculated by the company. So that certainly is a big issue. So I think that, calculating costs in manufacturing can be challenging for those companies, Jeff, that aren't following the best practices that you've been discussing. I'd say from what we've seen is the top cost management issues are, number one, companies don't know how much things should cost. They don't know how to allocate costs to products. They don't know how to predict future costs, and they can't control costs during the product development life cycle. Hey, Jesus, there's been a lot of very important foundational concepts that Jeff has gone over. What's your perspective on that?
Okay, thank you, Mike. If you don't mind, I'm going to explain that in Spanish to be sure that we have a clear message.
Absolutely.
Miren, el concepto es simple y es algo que nosotros siempre, thank you, es algo que siempre enseñamos. El precio es una política, el costo es una realidad. Las cosas no tienen precio, tú le pones el precio, pero el costo sí existe. Yo quiero saber a qué precio me vendes, quiero saber qué estoy pagando, cuál es el costo. ¿Cuánto te costó el material, la mano de obra, el transporte, los indirectos? ¿Cuál es tu utilidad? Pero lo más importante, ¿cómo es esto en comparación a otros? Para que yo pueda entonces predecir modelos de costo. Si sube el acero 20%, cuánto debe subir todo el producto. Obviamente no 20%, la parte proporcional. ¿Y qué podemos hacer para evitar ese incremento del 20%? Porque ya sabemos dónde está. Lo que hacemos con esta metodología es hacerte consciente del costo y saber por qué estás pagando, porque en el momento en que sé por qué estoy pagando, sé que puedo reducir, ¿no? El ejercicio que pusieron fue muy bueno. ¿Qué es mejor? ¿Hacerlo en una planta en Estados Unidos o hacerlo en la planta de Querétaro? A ver, espérame, ¿qué vamos a comparar? ¿No? Transportes, manos de obras, overheads. ¿Qué máquina estás usando? Probablemente tu proveedor usa una máquina muy vieja que es muy lenta y te genera un costo muy alto. Entonces, este análisis de costos es el gran pretexto para conocer lo que realmente pasa. Entonces, vamos a tener control de qué compramos, cuánto cuesta, qué va a pasar con estos costos y cómo podemos trabajar juntos. Entonces, esta gráfica que nos presentaron Jeff y Mike es súper importante porque así vamos a intervenir. Vamos a ser cost managers, no vamos a ser regateadores, no vamos a estar pidiendo, dame un descuento. Vamos a saber hasta dónde podemos llegar y qué tenemos que hacer. Entonces, yo creo que es un salto dramático de ser un comprador pide descuentos a un comprador que analiza costos y trabaja con el proveedor para hacerlo. De ahí vendrá la innovación, de ahí vendrá la sostenibilidad, de ahí vendrá la gestión del riesgo. Entonces, créanme que te abre muchas puertas, ¿no? Yo estoy muy contento del programa, de la empresa, y creo que para automotriz esto es casi día con día y aún así para muchas no, pero no importa qué industria estés, esta metodología te va a abrir los ojos y te va a hacer subir 2, 3, 4 niveles como comprador, porque sí va a sentar en los terrenos que hoy el mercado nos pide. Entonces, esto que vieron como teoría se aprende cómo hacerlo y es lo importante. Entonces, bueno, regreso con Mike para que nos sigan platicando y vean algunos ejemplos de lo que se va a hacer. Thank you, Mike. All yours.
Excellent, Jesus. Thank you very much for that perspective. I'd like to switch gears a little bit, Jeff. There's a lot of buzz in manufacturing around this concept of Industry 4.0. And as a consulting firm, we've translated that into purchasing best practices that lead to what we call Purchasing 4.0. Can you guide us through the phases of cost reduction and how these phases are related to Purchasing 4.0?
The numbers that are on this slide are based upon our actual experience over the last 15 years. So if a company calls us in and asks us to look at what they're buying and says, you know, can you help us? We look at, are they only buying on piece price? And if they are, they probably got too many suppliers, not enough knowledge about the cost. And as they start using cost breakdowns, as they start developing cost models, they start moving closer to what we call optimal cost, or what the product should cost. And these are actual numbers that we use when we're working with companies and putting together proposals. Right? And what we see is on the left-hand side is kind of Purchasing 3.0, sending out lots of RFQs to source a piece of business, maybe multiple rounds of RFQs to many people. Some are using cost breakdowns and getting cost information from their supply base, but they're really not asking for accurate information. They're just looking for leverage to be able to negotiate down their labor rate or their overhead rate. Purchasing 4.0 is about dealing with fewer suppliers, but getting in much more detail on the costing, much more detail of what's actually driving the cost of the product, the physicals of the part design and the physicals of the manufacturing process, to develop cost models. And once you have that cost models, to be able to benchmark those and move closer and closer to optimal cost.
Okay, so Jeff, that's a great overview. Let me paint a little scenario for you. Let's call you the buyer, and I'll be the salesperson that walks into your office and says, hey, we have a great chance to win a new bid on some new business here from a major OEM. The bid is due in 3 days. I'm sure some of you on the webinar have had that scenario in your past. Now, Jeff, you know that I'd never do that to you, but you also know that you have no chance to market test your suppliers. since they most likely already have quote fatigue from too many RFQs and not enough business awarded their way. In reality, your suppliers may have even stopped responding. So looking at these phases of cost reduction, how do the concept of cost management fit in here, Jeff?
What Purchasing 4.0 allows you to do, and we've got some clients that have the ability to do this. As the buyer, I would say, okay, what are the physical attributes of the part that you're looking at? You're buying we're looking at an injection molding part. What's the length, width, height, and weight? And be able to put that into my desktop modeler and say, hey, the estimate says the should be cost here is $2, but the predictive pricing tells me that I've got an 84% chance that one of the suppliers is going to quote $2.06 or less. Okay? And folks that have adopted Purchasing 4.0 and have adopted these techniques have that ability. The buyer has the ability to respond on the commodity at any point in time and have confidence that their supply base is going to be able to deliver the product that was asked for at the cost.
Yeah, and this whole concept of predictive pricing, in the past, it seemed like that type of cost engineering, cost modeling, and predictive analytics came from even a centralized cost engineering group. But the whole concept of Purchasing 4.0 is to take those tools and technologies and put those directly on the desktop of the buyer, so that those decisions can be made in split seconds as opposed to could be days or weeks. Okay, so I told everyone at the beginning we'd have 3 anonymous poll questions. We will not share your results. We'll aggregate the results and just show the community. Let's start out with our first poll question. Have you or your company participated in any sort of cost management training curriculum in the past? And we'll go ahead and launch that poll. Okay, we'll keep the poll question open another couple seconds. Okay, for the sake of time, why don't we close the poll and share the results with everyone. So 26% have indicated yes, that's a good thing. 56% no, so maybe some of the concepts that we're talking about here on today's webinar would be of interest to you, and especially this cost management certification program. And 18% somewhat are not sure. So we're shared the results so you see how you stack up against your peers. Okay, we'll go ahead and close this and start back in. So we know that especially during this pandemic, manufacturing companies are focusing on cost and cost reduction, but they have some challenges that we've just reviewed. And so what I'd like to talk about now is how best-in-class companies are approaching cost management and achieving the cost savings goals that they desire. I think maybe the best way to do this is to share a case study from our consulting practice. This happens to be an example of a global tier 1 automotive supplier of seating to major OEMs. If you can imagine, this company buys several small motors in various shapes and forms for power seating adjustment, and they buy these from a number of suppliers around the world. Jeff, APD, Advanced Purchasing Dynamics, we did the analysis on all their quote data submitted by suppliers and found many areas of opportunity. And we call this case study spreading of the peanut butter. Can you explain that?
One is what we found in our consulting practice is when buyers are getting cost breakdowns from suppliers, 85% of the time they're getting them in Excel and they're not aggregating the data. So what we did for this client was we took 150 to 200 quotes and we aggregated the data to look at variation that had occurred over the previous 18 months to 2 years. And what we found in one example, we had an electric motor that was put onto an assembly that 2 of their suppliers were providing. So 2 suppliers were buying the same electric motor, putting it on their assembly and shipping it to our customer. The price difference between those 2 was 40%. The other has to do with overheads, and we've got some slides on overheads going on, but a major component of cost structure is overheads, like how much it costs to rent the plant or the plant manager's salary and all the salary staffs. And those costs get hard to allocate to products, and suppliers frequently quote inconsistent rates. And what we were able to find in this example was a supplier had quoted a rate of $100 an hour overhead rate, and then $400 an hour, and then $100 an hour.
Yeah.
The buyer who was temporarily filling in had approved the $400. Mm-hmm. So it ended up being a very easy conversation for the purchasing director to go back and ask the supplier, what'd you do here?
Yeah.
And negotiate that cost away. Yes,
I think at the end of the day, that simple thing of looking at overhead rates resulted in an actual savings of $360,000. So that's a great case study, Jeff, and certainly, I guess, paints the picture of spreading peanut butter, spreading the overhead rates over the entire plant. So we've already established that now more than ever, manufacturing companies are focusing on cost. And frankly, our perspective is that they'll look to people who understand proper cost management techniques in a manufacturing environment to lead the way. We also know that shifts in operational approaches often require individuals and organizations to build skills and knowledge. Jeff, is it true that cost management is also a situation where these skills need to be built? And what types of skills and what do individuals and organizations need to do, and what do they need to acquire?
Well, my belief has always been that buyers who understand cost position themselves better for their career. Salespeople who better understand cost position themselves better because they're able to talk with data and facts and negotiate based upon a knowledge-based position. Collaboration and learning to collaborate, if you're in purchasing, learning to collaborate with your suppliers to take cost out is also a great skill set. So the combination of learning cost, learning how to collaborate, put you in a great position from a career standpoint.
Yeah, and I think one of the concepts you mentioned there, Jeff, was costing and cost modeling and utilizing purchasing. Traditional thinking is that cost modeling is a highly technical task reserved for cost engineers. Is that perception changing? And if so, why do you think so, Jeff?
I think it is changing. I think the course that we've laid out, one of the purchasing directors who came to the certification program with his whole purchasing organization said, look, the way the course is laid out is so fundamentally sound that it makes things seem easy, and the difficult things like running multivariate regression actually were quite easy to do. Yeah. So a combination of how we put the course together, plus advances that have been made in Excel, to be quite frank, put a lot of sophisticated tools right at your fingertips to be able to do a lot with data.
Excellent. Luis, let me bring you into the conversation. I'd like to gain your perspective on as we discuss cost management certification. Can you comment on the value of certification for the webinar participants?
Sí, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Sí me escuchan? Bueno, básicamente, y lo voy a decir en español para ser un poco más claro, una certificación, y hemos visto muchas certificaciones relacionadas con este tipo de actividades, es un reconocimiento a un conocimiento con base en un estándar, ¿sí? APD, Advanced Purchasing Dynamics, ha desarrollado una metodología formal que permite al comprador encontrar reducciones de costos sin afectar el desempeño y la relación con el proveedor, por lo que consideramos que esta es una gran herramienta para cualquier comprador de cualquier industria en Latinoamérica, no tan solo automotriz. Thank you, Jeff. Mike.
Excellent. Luis, thanks for your perspective. Really appreciate that. So we want to save some time for the end for question and answers. So we're gonna pick up the pace just a bit. And I'd also like to dig into some of the concept of cost management certification. But before we dig into the topics, Jeff, can you describe what types of accreditation that participants will receive?
Well, the participants in the program are going to invest around 32 hours of their time. We recognize that through a certification, the Certified Purchasing Cost Management Professional. have the ability to add that certification onto their LinkedIn profiles, which has become everybody's resume of record these days. But also, they can apply those 32 hours of continuous education credit if they're pursuing professional certifications. We've had folks use it for a program management certification, for purchasing certifications like ISM, and have those continuing ed credits count towards maintaining those certifications as well.
Okay, excellent. We've talked a lot about purchasing, and I think if we take a step back, Jeff, that the cost management certification program, it actually was originally designed for purchasing professionals. Our thinking was that if we could increase cost knowledge within purchasing and provide buyers with the tools for using should cost models on their desktop, that frankly, we could create powerhouse purchasing teams. We quickly realized that not only were companies sending their entire purchasing teams, but salespeople, finance, engineering, and other stakeholders that wanted to understand costing concepts were attending. So Jeff, why do you think so many people have attended from different functions within the company?
I think there's an understanding that there's or a realization that there's a fundamental lack of understanding on cost methods and cost methods being deployed. So it was one or two of our customers in the fall of last year that started to send a wider audience. This week I've been conversing with the CEO of a company in Mexico that we've been working with for well over a year. And he's looking at sending folks from his sales organization so that they better understand what customers are asking for, from his manufacturing operation so they can tie together what they're telling the customer with what's happening on the manufacturing floor, as well as their purchasing folks.
Excellent, Jeff. So, I've been through the program, and it's just an incredible 4-month journey. Jeff mentioned that it's 32 credit hours or 32 hours of work, but it's spread out over a 4-month cycle. But the journey is just filled with topics that I thought I knew a lot about, but was intrigued to see different angles or perspectives. What does the course look like, and how does it work, Jeff?
Well, we meet monthly as a group for 2 hours. During that time, we're going to present some general theories. We're going to answer questions from materials that were completed between the cohorts. So once a month, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time, we meet. We go over materials, and then on the learning platform, we have a combination of on-demand videos, exercises, and quizzes that folks go through. So in between the monthly meetings, you complete the module that we're working on. Then we look at what the work that's been done on that module to kind of do a refresh in the next one. So the modules are broken up into Module 1 is more about understanding cost on manufacturing shop floors and cost accounting. Module 2 is about using supplier data supplied on quotes or physical part attributes to start doing modeling. Module 3 gets into how to do predictive costing. And then Module 4, we're going to look at total acquisition cost, total relationship cost, and net present value of decisions.
Great. And we'll talk a little bit later in the webinar about our feature of having Spanish language support for webinar participants that would be of value to. So we'll address that and how that support fits into each of these modules in a couple minutes. So let's start to unpack the cost management certification program and share some content with the webinar participants. I know we don't have enough time to load 4 months of the program into this webinar, but let's start to talk about some basic fundamentals of costing. And Jeff, maybe you can describe how those are taught within the first month. And can you just simply walk us through at a high level what that looks like?
Yeah, this is a kind of a normal pie chart or breakdown of cost for manufacturing, where material cost is the predominant cost, followed by burden or overhead. So we go through each one of these 4 elements of cost. We'll do things like talk about what's included in burden. There's an exercise where buyers or participants in the course are asked to take what they've learned and actually allocate cost into variable and fixed components to prepare a quote. We talk about how those overhead costs are assigned on the manufacturing shop floor it might be by machine. If it's a warehouse, overhead costs are assigned by square foot. And we'll talk about some of the things that we see. You want to be able to allocate overheads based upon machine tonnage. For example, in injection molding, you would expect a 200-ton injection molding machine to cost more to run per hour than a 50-ton press. And it does. And we go through how to allocate and come up with that differentiation.
So in the first month of the program, Jeff, I guess we're laying the basic fundamentals of costing and educating the participants on how to leverage cost in your on your average in your daily use. So let's fast forward a few months into the program, Jeff, and talk about cost breakdowns and cost modeling. Let's start with cost breakdowns. How are they used and why are they used?
Well, cost breakdowns enable the buyers to understand more about the cost, and the benefit to the suppliers ought to be that, you know, if I know more about cost, if I know more about your cost competitiveness, I can deal with fewer suppliers in my supply base. So, you know, kind of the benefit of providing cost breakdowns is you get to be one of a few suppliers versus one of many. And once you get that data, then you can start using that data to develop cost models. And then you can validate those models and come to the point where you've got predictive pricing. So by putting in the physical part attributes, you have the ability then to predict what the costs are going to be. And in some cases, suppliers aren't going to provide cost breakdowns, and buyers in some cases don't want cost breakdowns. We teach how to model using the physical part attributes and come up with predictive pricing that way. But when we've got cost breakdowns, then we want to be able to develop a cost model and do quick side-by-side comparison of supplier cost structures and of the cost model that we have to have knowledge-based negotiations with the suppliers and to quickly identify opportunities.
Okay, so we very quickly there went over a few concepts from the class. Again, it's a 4-month program, so we can't pack everything in there. But Luis, at a high level, we just reviewed these concepts, and I guess I think it would be of interest to the webinar participants for you to explain how will the Spanish language support we're offering in partnership with Corporate Resources Management work for the program participants?
Sí, gracias, Mike. Mira, aunque sabemos que realmente ya todos los compradores actualmente dominamos mucho el inglés desde hace muchos años, prácticamente es algo ya necesario, consideramos que tener una sesión breve para aclarar dudas en español sería de gran utilidad y ya en el mediano plazo podríamos ofrecer el programa en español para ampliar el acceso a los compradores a esta metodología tan importante y tan útil. Se organizarán 4 sesiones de 1 hora cada una y se pedirá a los participantes que nos envíen sus preguntas con anticipación para poder tener respuestas concretas. Esa es la manera en cómo vamos a respaldar en español este programa, Mike. Thank you.
Excellent, Luis. Thank you very much for that explanation. And let's do our second poll question. Open it up to the audience. Are you interested in cost training? Yes, no, somewhat, or not sure? Let's take a moment to respond to this poll. Okay, excellent. We've got some great responses. John, why don't we go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everyone? So are you interested in cost training? 70% said yes, 5% said no, and 25% said somewhat. So again, hopefully this information in the webinar is of value to you today. Okay, so Advanced Purchasing Dynamics completed 5 cohorts of cost management certification last year, and we're proud and very appreciative of the major brand names that have participated. We're showing some of those companies today, but some of the companies like Magna, Broza, Grupo Antolin, Cummins, Bose, FedEx, and many more that you see here sampling on your screen. These are some major brand names in the manufacturing market. And we know some of you are in attendance today, and we appreciate that, and thank you for your support. So for those of you that are interested in cost management certification, we've come up with a unique approach to deliver this training through Mexico and Latin America. And we'll give you a snapshot of what the rates are and what timing for each of the cohorts start. So the standard rate for cost management certification's 4-month program is $1,250 US. The early bird rate is $1,000, and what I have highlighted below here in yellow is based upon each of the cohort starting dates. So we have a cohort starting on February 2nd. We have a cohort starting on March 10th, another one April 6th, and one into May. And if you are able to register, we know that this is a very short time frame, so we're extending our early bird rate or our early registration rate to February 1st. So if that's too quick to get going, we're going to extend the early bird rate for the March cohort, which starts March 10th to February 22nd, and so forth. So if you were able to register prior to those early registration dates, the cost would be $1,000. And as we mentioned, a number of companies have sent actually their entire purchasing department or purchasing finance salespeople. So if you do have a group of 3 or more, we'd be certainly willing to work with you on that price. As Luis had mentioned, this does include 1-hour tutorial session in Spanish per module. So for each module, we will hold a separate session for Spanish-speaking support to help out.
Mike, one point I think we missed talking about today, and we're going at kind of a fast pace, and I apologize I missed it, is one of the aspects of the program that kind of makes it unique is that participants do projects as a part of the program, and the companies that sent multiple folks invited us to their project report outs. A couple of the directors said, we really love the program, and APD, can you come and when people present their projects to senior management and comment on those. In the last 2 weeks, we attended 4 customer report out sessions, and the savings were over $10 million in first-year annualized savings that participants reported out based upon being able to identify and implement opportunities as a result of participating in the certification.
Absolutely, Jeff. That's a great point, that operationalizing it immediately what you learn through cost management certification through these projects, significant impact that we've made, as well as the walk away from many participants is that's actually their favorite part of the course. So let's do our final poll question. We're curious to see if you think that Spanish support for cost management certification would be of an advantage to you. So do you think it would be an advantage for you to take the cost management certification for Spanish? Let's go ahead, in Spanish, let's go ahead and open the poll.
As you're taking the poll, someone asked the question, how many hours? And that depends upon the individual, but normally we're given 32 hours worth of certification credit on the program. Some of the participants bid off larger projects, and they made it part of their normal workflow. So they actually spent more time on the course, but it was also part of their normal workload, and they were able to identify and implement savings as a result of that extra time.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So do you think it'd be an advantage? The majority, certainly 81%, think that it would be 13% no, and 6% somewhat. So thank you. Actually, that poll question helps us with planning from a program standpoint. So thank you for participating in that poll. So at this point, we do have a few questions that have come in for the team. We're going to go ahead and go through the question and answer session. If anyone has questions, certainly send them over to us. In the chat, we did have a number of them that came through. Let me start with the first one, if that's okay, Jeff and Luis and Jesus. My company works a lot with electronics and embedded software. Do you see this as a good candidate for cost modeling, and can we benefit from participating in cost management certification?
The answer is yes. If you remember back to the slide that we had that showed participants who've been in the program so far, it included companies like Magna, AMD, Cummins Engine Company. Those companies, the buyers in those companies were actually doing projects based upon electronics and had very good results based upon that.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. We had a couple other questions come in. What is that one about the post? Can you post the link for the certification course in LinkedIn? Absolutely. We definitely promote that. I think we had over 100 people in the last 2 to 3 months, 4 months that have graduated from the class, and we certainly we provide you with guidance and direction for how to put this in your certifications area of your profile, and then we promote it. Everyone in the class, it builds a little community, and everybody's promoting each other's certification. So appreciate that question. Thank you very much.
Someone's asking, I'm an operation manager. Will this program add value to me? And I fundamentally think so. My first job was as a production supervisor at Cummins Engine Company, and Cummins had great costing at the time in the early 80s. And I think it made me a better production manager, understanding the cost structure and being able to talk to folks in sales and folks in finance about what my actual costs.
Okay. So bottom line of value. Another question, this certification is addressed for automotive brands. My concern is that our company, which is apparel, may not get similar profits. And I think that we're presenting it as automotive, but it's general manufacturing, any kind of manufacturing company. But I don't know, Jeff, what's your thinking on the apparel aspect of it?
I think the apparel aspect of it has some interest, right? I know in buying apparel, I liken apparel to buying trim covers, seat covers that go on cars, right? They have fabric associated with it. They have a number of inches being sewed associated with it, and total acquisition costs. So from a manufacturing standpoint, I can make the tie directly to it. And my automotive friends would also complain about the lack of profits for them as well. I think everyone wants to increase their profits.
Absolutely. So another question, how many hours is the entire program? I think what I'll do is just to set this up a bit. So this is, for example, if you were to attend the March cohort, the first live module is from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So there's 2 hours of live training that you would do on March 10th. And then on April 13th, there would be 2 hours of live training, and that trainer is Jeff Burris. And then on May 18th, so each month there's a 2-hour block of live training. And then between that block and the next month, there will be roughly 6 hours of on-demand training that happens on the web. We have a learning platform that we put on-demand learning out there. And then at the end of each module, you will take a certification test. So it's not saving up the answers for the end of the course. We're testing you along the way, so that at the end of the 4 modules, you've taken 4 certification tests. And then certainly, so that's basically 8 hours per month. And then we have this 1-hour tutorial session in Spanish for those that wish to participate in that program. Okay, another question. Can we use this methodology on any kind of part?
The answer is we don't teach just one method, we teach multiple methods. And we've yet to have someone come into the program and not be able to find one of the methods that they have for working on the project or working on a commodity in their spend. And it's been as diverse as injection molded components to basically the acoustical structures that go around diesel engines for gen sets, and folks looking at food and food purchases. So we've been very diverse in the customers that have come into the program and how they've been able to find value out of the program for what they're buying.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
So we do have another couple questions coming in, but what I thought I'd do is just maybe, Jesus, start with you, a little bit of a round table. Do you have some final words or words of encouragement or thinking, and just to kind of summarize your thoughts for the webinar participants today, Jesus?
Well, Jesus is thinking. Let me step in for a second. Someone a very important question up, and it was about Excel. Included in the program are 17 Excel workbooks, right? So we not only train you how to do it, but we then give you Excel workbooks that demonstrate what was trained, and those are exercises, and those are part of the quizzes, but those are also yours to take and put on your laptop. So 6 months from now, if you want to do a multivariate analysis, you don't have to go back to a PDF. You pull up the Excel file we gave you, and it'll take you step by step how to do that.
Good.
Mike,
okay, Jesus, let's
yes. Let me say it in Spanish to clarify. A ver, tú no puedes hacer análisis de costos si no tienes costos. Lo que yo he encontrado es, a ver, yo compro cajas. ¿Cuánto he pagado los últimos 2 años por las cajas? ¿Cuánto pesa? ¿Cuál es el suaje? ¿Cuántos cortes tiene? ¿De qué peso es? ¿A cómo estaba la celulosa? ¿En qué máquina lo fabricaron? ¿Cuánto volumen compré? Cuando yo junto todos esos datos, es como un Big Data y empiezo a hacer analítica. Yo digo, una caja de tal peso, en tal máquina, en tal volumen, debería costar tanto. Haz de cuenta que te haces tu propio cotizador y ya sabes por dónde viene la negociación. Entonces, lo puedes aplicar a lo que quieras. Lo que necesitas es tener una colección de datos. O sea, a ver, yo sé que si voy a un restaurante y desayuno huevos, jugo y leche y cuesta más o menos tanto, pero en este lugar cuesta más. Y entonces empiezo a atender cuartiles. En las fondas, los baratos vale tanto, en los intermedios vale tanto, en los caros vale tanto. Esto se sale de lo caro, esto es, oh my God, esto está loco, o esto es demasiado barato, a ver qué pasó. Entonces, claro, yo tengo que sumar, a lo mejor lo más caro de un restaurante son sus indirectos, no es lo directo. Una fonda no tiene la estructura que tiene un restaurante de lujo con capitanes, meseros, alfombras, candiles. Eso es lo que te va a llevar esto, te abre los ojos impresionantemente. ¿Por qué abrirlo a América Latina en inglés al principio? Porque la pregunta que se hizo fue, ¿interesa hacerlo en español? Ustedes saben lo que se gasta preparando todo un material en español, que el mercado, o sea, la relación con EPI era, ¿vale la pena traducirlo? Por eso metimos una pregunta, ¿no? Ahora, el 90% de los compradores deberían hablar inglés, ¿no? Entendemos que deberían, lo dije, estoy claro que no es así. Entonces ellos dicen, pero ¿para qué hacemos una traducción si hablan inglés? Pues vamos a irlo probando. O sea, entonces dijimos, bueno, vamos a meter una sesión de dudas para apoyar a la gente que se atoró un poco en el idioma. La verdad es que los videos son cortos. Ellos dicen que 6 horas, lo puedes ver 3 veces y puedes tener 2 horas presenciales y 20 horas de curso si lo quieres ver 8 veces, porque lo ves tantas veces como quieres y lo practicas tantas veces como quieres. Entonces no hay una contradicción. Ellos no querían ir a América Latina porque no tienen una base de datos, porque ellos se centraban en Estados Unidos. La alianza con nosotros es, te ayudamos a promoverlo, y si esto funciona como debe, la intención es que cuando sean, por ejemplo, cursos cerrados, los demos en español y vayamos, o sea, tendríamos que grabar todas las sesiones en español. ¿Hay mercado? Pues tú piénsalo, como dueño de negocio dices, yo no invierto hasta no ver resultado. Entonces, lo abrimos porque seguramente no la conocían. La certificación la dan ellos mismos. Hay diferentes tipos de certificaciones. Hay certificaciones de empresas o instituciones. Hay certificaciones a nivel reconocimiento de instituciones externas, como podría ser, por ejemplo, APIX o podría ser PMI, que es otro nivel de certificación. Pero bueno, yo creo que al final a mí el título no me parece relevante, sino el conocimiento. Entonces, yo sí creo que es una gran experiencia. Estamos abiertos a dudas posteriores. Esto se graba, se sube al canal de YouTube. Y bueno, pues cualquier cosa pueden escribir. Ahí está la liga para que puedan pedir información en inglés. Pero como siempre estamos a sus órdenes para lo que requieran, tanto Luis como Samira como yo. Y nuestra intención es desarrollar todo un grupo para apoyarlos en el futuro cercano. Pero bueno, con la pandemia encima tampoco esto ha sido simple. Pero bueno, aquí estamos para servirles y nuevamente gracias por su presencia. And thanks, APD, Jeff and Michael, for your support. You have been the dream partners for anyone. You are professional, you are focused, you are open, and the most important, you always think in the final customer. That's what I love. Everything that we do is always considering the customer, and it's the only way to work, and that's why we are so happy. And I think this video will be seen by more people, and we will receive more questions, and we will try to answer everything, or we know that we have your support to answer anything. Thank you again for all this great experience.
Yes. Hey, Susan, we echo that. It's been a great partnership with you. What I have on the screen now is actually, if you're interested in registering for the class or downloading the class brochure, if you take your camera phone out, aim it at the QR code, tap the banner, it'll take you to a site that you can download the brochure. Or on the right-hand side, you can just visit apurchasingd.com/CRM. I think that's it, wrapping up. We did have one additional question, Jeff. We have 3 minutes. Maybe you can address this one. Most of my suppliers don't use cost breakdowns, or somehow they don't want to participate in using them. How difficult will it be? How difficult will this be to be successful in cost management, and will it be useful in the certification?
I think half of the projects out of the fall cohorts involved physical part attributes or physical service attributes or service attributes, and doing cost catalogs for commodities where they were not getting cost breakdowns from suppliers. So you can be very successful in modeling techniques even if you don't have cost breakdowns. The other thing we do in the course is we talk about negotiations with suppliers and how to negotiate with suppliers for more cost transparency. And throughout the course, we're using the book called Getting to Yes as our negotiation framework. And we're talking at each step. How do you negotiate with suppliers for cost transparency? How do you negotiate with suppliers once you have cost models developed?
Okay, great. Why don't we end it there in respect of time? Jesus, Luis, Samira, thank you very much for partnering with Advanced Purchasing Dynamics. Thank you to everyone on the webinar today for investing your time to learn more about cost management certification. Hopefully this webinar was of value to you. We will be doing a survey at the end. We'd appreciate your candor if you can complete the survey. And again, thank you, everyone.